Hello world, it's Alex the Dev. In this video I'm going from this beautiful blank Unity project to a finished game in just 30 minutes, kinda.
But why? Why would you do that?
Well, I watched an old video from the legend himself, Brackeys. At the end of this video he encouraged everyone else to take on the challenge, and I thought to myself, I can do that.
I was wrong.
Before I started, let me explain the game plan. The idea was to create a game in 10 minutes. However, I wanted to make a mobile game, something I could later release since that's where all my other projects are. Publishing a game on iOS and Android takes a lot more than 10 minutes. You have to build the game, upload it, create a store page, collect screenshots, create any other promotional material like app icons and banners, fix any errors along the way. There's just too much to do. It seemed unfair to include that in the challenge. I also wanted to make my life a little bit easier by brainstorming some super simple ideas on paper before I started any timers. Once I had an idea and convinced myself that this wasn't impossible, it was time to begin. But Alex, you're wondering, you set out to make a game in 10 minutes. Why does the title say 30? Good question. Let's discuss the first 10 minutes. The first minute was spent loading up Unity. Oh, how you've got to love them loading times. I then imported the 2D sprite package, which had even more loading times, and switched the project to Android in the build settings, even more loading. Although this one's kind of on me because I probably could have left this until the game was actually finished. At this point, we're almost 2 minutes in, and so far I have the same shiny blank project I started with. It's not looking good. Quick, add some graphics. So I changed the background colour to black and added a simple player using two simple circle sprites. Cool, we now have visuals, but it's still not a game. I created a quick script that got the ball moving, so when you tap it changes direction, and when you hit the edge of the screen it will also change direction and add a point. This required some UI to track the score, so I jumped back into Unity and created some text, and voila. We are almost 8 minutes in and this is what we have so far. It is finally starting to somewhat resemble a game, but it's still missing something to avoid. Before I could get there though, I noticed my first bug, something I really didn't have time for right now. So when you bounced against the walls, you could get stuck, which caused the score to fly up. Luckily this was easily fixed. I just needed to add a delay and push the ball back a few pixels when it changes direction. A couple of lines of code and it was solved. The problem is we are now almost 10 minutes in and I still have no obstacles. So without hesitation, I opened up the greatest art tool of all time, Microsoft Paint. From there I created this absolute masterpiece.
Okay, I like it, Picasso.
I dragged that into Unity and I was ready to go. At this point I realised there was no chance of me finishing this on time. To make a game you need a lot more than 10 minutes. Alex the Dev's top tips. But hey, 20 minutes isn't half bad either, so I added an extension. With the timer restarted, I rushed to get the spawning system working. For the next few minutes I worked on some code to instantiate the spike on the left edge of the screen. I then moved it to the top, slightly off screen, and changed the pivot point so the spike sits comfortably on the edge. Now it just needs to move. I created a new script for the parent of all the newly created spikes and simply made it move down the screen over time, which looked like this. Wait, something isn't right here. I had to change the speed of the spikes based on the player's speed. This was the perfect place to add a difficulty curve. If I increase the player's speed over time, the game gets harder the longer you play. Great, once I made sure everything was working again, I just needed to create a random number and a few if statements to decide if to put the spike on the left of the screen or the right side. I gave it a 40% chance of spawning left, 40 right, and 20% chance nothing spawns at all. This would create more gaps between the spikes for the player to hit. And how long did that take? We're at 21 minutes. What the f***? Alex the Dev will be right back after the break. Okay, 30 minutes it is. It's looking good so far, but it's still missing the ability for the player to lose. To achieve this, the spikes need collisions. I spent a few seconds changing the colours of everything and added a polygon collider 2D to fit the spike perfectly. I then added a collider and a rigid body to the ball so we can actually detect the collisions. That's the setup done. Now back to scripting. I created a game over variable for both my scripts and made sure that the game's functionality only works while the player is still alive. I then set up a function that detects collision and set the game over state to true when you hit something. I also disabled the sprite renderer for the player so it disappears when you lose. That gave me very basic game over functionality. I tested it and it looked perfect. This only took me to 25 minutes, so I thought why not add a game over screen and a quick main menu to return to in between levels. So using simple built-in text and buttons, I whipped up a quick screen with a replay button and a place to show the high score. It's not the prettiest, but it's fit for purpose. Now I could finish up with a little bit of scripting. With a couple of extra lines of code, I had the screen showing when you lose and a replay button working. I needed to save and display the top score. I just did this using player pref since that was the easiest built-in solution. With a few minutes still left on the clock, I decided to make a quick main menu. I copied over the game over screen and just changed a few details. To wrap things up, I just had to get it working, so when you tap the screen it starts, and that is the job done. At this point we was just at the 30-minute mark and I was done. Yay! Or so I thought. I forgot to add sound completely. Part of me wanted to just let it go and call it finished, but it's such an important feature I spent an extra 1 minute 39 seconds exactly adding a simple looping track. This took me to just over 30 minutes. Now you understand the title. And now it was time to make it mobile. That was it. The game was finished in just over 30 minutes. I had a new game. It's nothing spectacular, but for the time I had, I think it could have been a lot worse. Now all I had to do is put it on mobile and throw a party. Nope. I had a lot of trouble getting this game on mobile. Google accepted it as it is, no issues. But as soon as I tried putting it on Apple, it was problem after problem. To begin with, the first version was rejected for spam. You can see on screen what was said exactly. Now I'll admit, it's a small, cruddy game, but it's not spam. As far as I could tell, it wasn't a clone of anything that already existed, and I have not spammed the App Store with any of my previous titles. I argued these points with the reviewer, and shockingly, they agreed, but they still rejected it. This time they claimed it was more a proof of concept, and I can't really argue with that. I mean, it does look and feel like a prototype. There was nothing I could do but play ball.
See what I did there, pun-wise?
So I grabbed my cape and set out on a quest to upgrade the game. Rather than going over everything I've added, I'll just let it roll across the screen now. It was a lot. I made sure that I listed all of these changes in the review notes, and surely they cannot deny it now. Well, they did. This time it was for a stupid reason. They claimed that since data is used to serve ads, I needed app tracking transparency pop up at the start of the game. Obviously, this was already in the game. I include it in every game I make, and I double checked this to make sure. But I didn't want to argue with them, so I resubmitted the game without changing a single thing, might I add. But this time I included a screenshot of the pop-up in the review notes, and finally it was accepted to the stores.
Oh, finally. It's over.
All that was left to do is update the Android version to match the one now on iOS. The problem is, adding all this new stuff means this version wasn't really made in 30 minutes. It's got an extra couple of hours under its belt. Although I did try to keep it as true to the original version as I could, it's basically the same game wearing a fancier hat. With that said, I did find a way to stay true to the 30-minute challenge. The original OG 30-minute version of the game, without all the fancy bells and whistles, can be played over on itch.io. I figured this was a nice workaround to stay true to what I set out to do. I created an itch account just for this game, although now I have one. I'm sure I'll find a use for it in the future. Game jams. Anyway, if you would like to play the original version of the game and see what 30 minutes of work created, there will be a link underneath this video where you can go play the game. Let's conclude this video with a question. Can you make a game in 10 minutes? I'm sure some of you game dev wizards, like this guy, could manage it quite easily. But for me, at least with this game, no. Can you make a game in 30 minutes? This seems much more doable. Now, as you know, I didn't include the build times and there was problems trying to publish it on mobile. So if the question is, can you make and release a mobile game in this time? I would say no, definitely not. But if you don't include the publishing side of things, then yeah, you can easily make a game in 30 minutes. And if you polish it up nicely within that time, it will probably get accepted straight away. I encourage anyone to give this a go. It's quite a fun challenge, plus you might get a new project out of it if you like the result. And don't forget, the original version of this game that was finished in 30 minutes is available to play on itch. There will be no updates for this version. It is preserved for the sake of this challenge, so check it out. Or check out the mobile version for a cleaner, more complete experience. There has only been one update on the mobile version. This just added the ability to remove ads and fixed a couple of minor things. Besides that, the game will also stay preserved for the sake of this challenge, so check that out too. I'd really appreciate it. That's everything. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. I have set myself a goal of getting to 1,000 subscribers, so if you're not subscribed, that would really help me out. Thanks for watching. Peace.